It's great to have you on the program. How have you been?
We've been busy. Thanks for having me on.
Well, yeah, obviously, when you start talking about everything that's international with the Oakland Athletics, you are the point on this. And first of all, congratulations on Shintaro. It was great having the press conference in the offices. We had him on the show here, really excited. Tell us how he got on your radar and when you started to really think, we've got a shot at this 6'6" right hander.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, we're pretty excited to have someone with Fuji's ability and experience come and join the staff.
What happened, Cody?
Adam Hislop and Tomi, our scouts in Japan, have done a phenomenal job following him over the years and have really seen a lot of the highs and some of the lows. But what we saw out of him the last 2 months of the NPB season make us believe that he can come over here and have success as a starting pitcher. And we know that was important to him.
What exactly did you see?
Um, I mean, when he's on, it can be utterly dominant. He's got a fastball that touches 100 miles an hour. He's got a split finger. He throws in the low to mid 90s. He struggled with his command at times over the years. But like I said, when he's on, it's good enough to get anybody out.
You know, when you start talking about guys that throw really hard, isn't that something that you see, whether we're talking about high school players, college players, even when you get them in the minor leagues? We can even see at the big league level, but whether it's international or it's in the United States, don't we see, for the most part, it's tough to harness that control when you're throwing that hard.
It is, and players are throwing harder and harder these days. And when you get someone who, has a plus major league fastball and the ability to command it, that's a combination you're looking for.
Over the years, you've been in this game a long time. When did you start to realize, wow, things are really changing with velocity? We're now seeing guys that we used to think 92 to 94, 94 to 96 to, my God, we got guys throwing 102, 103.
Right. Yeah. No, we talk about, especially with Billy, because Billy always talks about the hard throwers that he faced, and Gooden and Nolan Ryan, and they weren't throwing 100. But yeah, I mean, David Price, the first pick when we took him in Tampa, was one of the first guys I remember who, routinely as a starting pitcher was throwing 98, 99 miles an hour. But it's really evolved here over the last 10 years or so.
And has the international game been the same like the United States? Have they progressed the same when you talk about velocity, or have they been a little bit behind?
Well, in the international market, you're more talking about kids that are 14 to 17. In that market, we're looking for projectable frames, good clean deliveries. If you see a kid throwing 82 to 85 at 15 years old, that's pretty good. So you're looking for projection and kind of estimating what you think he'll do, 7 to 10 years from now.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that whenever we start hearing about the signings and we're hearing about a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. I mean, even we're talking about high school kids who are 18. I mean, you just don't know. What is that like? What kind of confidence do you have to say, okay, we're going to put this kind of money to a kid who, let's say, is 17 years old? How much confidence in that decision do you have to have?
You have to have a lot. And, it really starts with the people on the ground. Steve Sharp, our international director, Juan Mosquera, who covers all of Latin America for us, our Hennis Paez, who leads our group in Venezuela. Our scouts work incredibly hard and spend a lot of time watching these players over a period of years before we make a decision on whether to bring them into the organization or not.
And coaching becomes so key for these kids. We had a great interview. We were just down at fantasy camp, and one of our all-time favorites was down there coaching. He's one of your managers down in Arizona, Adam Rosales. We love Rosie. Yeah. And Rosie was talking about bringing these young players in, and it's totally understandable. You're coming from Latin America. You're a young kid. You get here, and you think, I finally made it to the United States. And Rosie has to say, yes, you did. That's great. But now this is just the start of the journey. We know how hard it was to get here, but now the journey really starts. Just talk about when you have these these young kids, they're like clay, and you need to mold them into hopefully Major League Baseball players.
Yeah, I mean, it starts on January 15th of every year. January 15th is a really special day in the international community. It's the culmination of years of hard work on behalf of the players and their families. And it's a great day for our scouts as well, who've seen these players since they were little kids. It's heartwarming to see them celebrate what is really just the first step in their journey into professional baseball. And they'll report to our Dominican complex and spend a year or two there under the tutelage of our scouts and coaches who work at the complex and run our summer league team. And it's been a year or two before Rosie even gets them.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and you're happy for these kids because you know what their dream is and their family's dream. And I think of Luis Morales. I got here; he was the number 5 in the top 50 international prospect list. I know we talked a little bit with David Forst about this, but just talk about this pitcher, what you see in him, and just when you start looking at projections, like when could he be on the radar for Oakland A's fans?
Yeah, Luis kind of headlined our international class this year, and we viewed it as a unique opportunity to add someone with some professional experience using our international amateur pool. He actually pitched for a year in the Cuban major leagues as an 18-year-old and struck out 30% of the batters he faced. He actually came onto our radar as a 15-year-old when he was pitching for the national team in a tournament in Colombia, and then resurfaced last year in Mexico City, where he's been living and training for the past year. We saw him at a showcase in Mexico, and he was absolutely electric. We pursued him aggressively when this pool opened, and we're looking forward to getting him over to Dominican and getting his career started.
You know, when you hear stories like that and knowing that you basically have scouts all over the world, when Shintaro signed, we were talking about your guys on the Pacific Rim. When you sign guys from Australia, it's just like, do you have time to sleep, or are you just always up worrying about what's going on around the world in baseball?
I don't. I do have time to sleep, and I don't have to worry because we have such good people, and they're all around the globe. We have a staff in Asia. You mentioned Australia. Dan Batrine is our scout there. Did a great job with BJ Cook, who we signed last year. And we have a whole slew of personnel throughout Latin America. So, I mean, we're well positioned everywhere in the globe.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was telling you before we started this interview, I got a buddy who works for Amazon, and he's got teams. He's got the team in the Bay Area, the team in Seattle. He's got a team in London. He's got a team in Poland. I mean, he's got to travel around the world to meet with his team. Just tell A's fans your job, what is like managing all these different scouts, all these different people, different time zones, different places in the world, different cultures. Everything's different. What's it like managing all these groups?
Well, the special thing about Oakland, and it's unique in that our front office is a little bit smaller, and we're all allowed to wear a lot of different hats. Our primary focus is on the major league team and the construction of the roster and trades and signings and assisting David with everything major league. But I also oversee the international department, which is time consuming, challenging, rewarding. I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, it seems like, when you talk about fascinating jobs, it sounds like a fascinating job. And let's talk about Darling Fernandez. He was ranked number 40 on the top 50 international prospects. He's the outfielder you also signed.
Yeah, Darling's a really good young hitter from the Dominican Republic. We've seen him a lot over the last couple of years. It's been fun to watch him mature and grow as a hitter. He's the kind of kid, the more you scout him, the more you like him. He's strong. He's got the potential for power. He sees the ball really well. Another kid we're really looking forward to getting into the system.
When you talk about the international game, the rules, it's tough to explain, and I know I'm not good at it, but the rules are different with everything. Back versus how this originally started out, how you could sign players. Now, when you talk about your international, the money that you have in your international pool, I guess we'll call it, the way you got to do the posting with guys out of the professional league in Japanese. Just talk about when you deal in the international market, the rules are different depending where you go in the world to sign players.
They are. It's fairly consistent in Latin America. And Australia. It's a little bit different in Asia because they do have professional leagues that we respect and we have protocol agreements with. But it is different from the U.S. in that we start scouting these players at a much younger age, and we can sign them at 16.
Yeah, that is truly amazing. Do you think we will see a change anytime soon of how you're able to do sign, I should say, amateur players internationally? I know people have talked about an international draft. Do you think we'll see a change?
I don't know. It's hard to say. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, we've been in favor of an international draft just to even the playing field a little bit, but we're comfortable working under the rules as they're currently outlined.
Mentioning that we were just at fantasy camp and going down to Arizona. Dan, as you know, it's pouring rain every day up in the Bay Area, and we were down in Arizona, and I had shorts on at 75 degrees, and my legs were so white I couldn't believe I had shorts on, but I was just so happy to be in warm weather. We're pretty juiced up now for spring training. Once you've tasted it and been down there and you're down at Mesa, so what's it like for you now, knowing that I know you're gonna have to load up the truck soon and your stuff before it leaves? Like, how do your juices get flowing at this time of the year?
We're getting to the point where we're itching to get down there and get going. I mean, we've worked pretty hard this offseason to reshape the roster and brought in a whole bunch of additional players. We think we have a deep and talented team, so we're all excited to get down to Arizona.
The one thing that we've talked a lot about on this show is after a while you start looking at all the players you guys have collected and you start saying there's competition at a lot of different spots. There's going to be competition for who's starting games. There's going to be competition for the bullpen. There's going to be competition with the position players. Last year was kind of, we understood what the process was and what was going on. Just talk about how different this spring training is going to be from last year.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have one of our largest groups. I mean, we've got 65 plus players coming to camp, and it's well documented that we're going to have some decisions to make with the pitching staff. We think we have a deep and talented staff, but we're going to have decisions to make on the position player side as well. But those things all have a way of sorting themselves out through the spring.
Is it crazy now to think that when we go into a season, we used to always buy these baseball magazines and they'd say, here's your 5 starting pitchers. And you're like, nah, you're going to need a lot more than that. We're going to need like 10, 11, 12, 13. Is it just crazy to think how many starting pitchers? It's kind of like horses. You got to have a stable of them.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long ago that you did only use 5. But last year we used the most players in A's history. And, we can only assume that we're going to need more than 5 starters going into the season. And like I said, we have a bunch of them that can all impact and play a role in the staff.
Is there a couple names you could give us for A's fans? Because we always get excited to know who the front office is really interested in. Is there a couple names that you could give us that you say, you know what, I'm really going to have my eye on these guys in spring training?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, on the position player side, Kyle Muller, someone who came over from Atlanta and the Murphy deal. He's one of the primary pieces. He'll get his chance to work his way into the rotation. He's 6'7". It's plus stuff across the board. He touches 98 miles an hour. He's got 2 breaking balls that are swing and miss pitches, threw a ton of strikes in AAA. So we're excited to see what he can do.
And he threw, I was going through the stats. I couldn't believe it. He threw a complete game last year in AAA.
Yeah, pretty rare.
That's like finding Bigfoot. I didn't know we could do that anymore.
Another guy, Esteury Ruiz, who came over in that same deal, will immediately become one of the most exciting and dynamic players on the team. He plays elite defense in the outfield. Put up ridiculous numbers in the minor leagues last year. He hits for average power. He stole 80-plus bags. If anybody's going to benefit from the larger bases this year, it's going to be somebody like him.
Yeah, we've been talking about him because we reached out to some Padre people and they absolutely loved him, didn't want to give him up. But obviously, if you're going to get a guy like Josh Hader, you got to give something up. And I know he's been on the radar for a long time for the Oakland Athletics. And he mentioned the rules. I'm sure you guys have been studying it. Do you think we'll see a dramatic impact on the game with these new rules? Or maybe not as much as us, who are us talking heads think that it will be that dramatic?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all curious to see how it's going to play out. With the bigger bases, I think teams will be incentivized to take a little more risk, and take an extra base with guys who can run. Selfishly, the pitch clock is something that we're looking forward to. Maybe shorten the games a little bit and get a little more action and a little less downtime. And then back to the bases. I mean, I think the definition of the bang bang play at first is going to change, and we'll see how that looks.
As you mentioned, you've worked for the Tampa Bay Rays before, and we always, when we have Rays people on, we always talk about they're kind of like the mirror image of us on the East Coast because of the ballpark issues and all the different things. When you work for organizations like this, and let's end on this kind of the fun part is it's always the process. You're always viewed as an underdog, but you're always having the ability to build something special to be able to compete with the big dogs and the big money teams. How much does that excite you, the process of doing it every single year with the Oakland Athletics?
I've been the thing I take away the most is the people that I've been able to work and learn from. I've been extremely fortunate to work with Billy and David, and Paul DePodesta and Andrew Friedman, some of the brightest minds in the game. And it's been a joy to learn and absorb what those guys have all been able to teach me.
And safe to say, this game's changed a lot since you first got in it.
No question. I think they would all say the same as well.
Yeah, like it. I don't know when somebody will do it, but somebody's going to need to write the book about how technology got into baseball and then how technology completely changed baseball.
I'm sure people are writing it as we speak.
Well, we always appreciate the time. Thank you so much, and we'll see you down at spring training.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.